Welcome, everyone. I'm Michelle Mays, and I'm the co-founder of Champions for Philanthropy. Alicia Powell and I are pleased to present today's event in partnership with the Playbook Agency, and we're excited to hear from our incredible lineup of speakers who will share their experiences and offer advice to help youth maintain a positive mental health and thrive during these difficult times. For those of you not familiar with our organization, Champions for Philanthropy is a consulting agency that assists professional athletes and other influencers with their charitable endeavors. We help athletes start or manage their nonprofit foundations, and we also work with clients to help create other charitable projects and initiatives, including connecting them with existing nonprofits and developing a strategy for giving. You can learn more about our work by following us on social media at Champions for Philanthropy. And now I'll turn it over to our co-hosts.
Thank you, Michelle. Happy Saturday, all. My name is Juliet Udochu, and I am the co-founder of the Playbook Agency. We want to thank you for investing your time and joining us for the Youth Empowerment Summit. We are so excited. So today we have an amazing lineup of panelists for the Youth Empowerment Summit. We will be talking about the importance of positive mental health and highlight the benefits of just focusing on mental health for youth and young adults. Before we dive into our panelists, I just want to give you a brief overview of the Playbook Agency. So the Playbook Agency, we are a consultant agency that works closely with athletes and influencers to draw up innovative and creative plays for their philanthropic giving and to help and give back to the community. All right, well, I talked a little about the Playbook Agency, and now I'm going to dive into our amazing panelists. Our first panelist is Shelden Williams. Shelden Williams is not also just a great basketball player. He's actually a client of the Playbook Agency. Shelden is a former NBA player. He's a former Duke Hall of Fame basketball player. He is the new coach of the College Park SkyHawks, and he is a founder of the Shelden Williams Foundation. Our next panelist will be Dr. Gay. Dr. Gay is a veteran mental health practitioner and the founder of Holistic Atlanta. And our last panelist is Malcolm Lemmons. Mr. Lemmons is a former professional athlete and the founder of Athletes Unheard. Now I want to throw it over to our amazing moderator, Shanti Dawes. I will let Shanti Dawes introduce herself as she introduces our panelists. Hey, Shanti.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Juliet. Thank you, Alicia, and everyone else. It is such an honor to be here. Shout out to all the youth around the nation that is watching this. One more time, I love to give it up for Champions for Philanthropy and the Playbook Agency. This conversation is so important. And I'm just excited to be on here with all these fine kings today, these brilliant minds, Black kings. What's good?
Good morning. How's it going, Shanti?
Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is, grand risings. Again, my name is Shanti Das. I'm the founder and executive director of Silence the Shame Incorporated, which is a nonprofit, and we empower and educate communities around mental health, especially communities of color. It really is an honor to be here today. And I want to give these young men a chance to tell a little bit about their backgrounds in maybe 30 to 60 seconds or less. But give us a little bit more about what you do and why this conversation around mental health and youth is so important to you. Let's start with Shelden Williams.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? As she said, my name is Shelden Williams. From Oklahoma City. Went to Duke University, graduated there, played in the NBA for 7 years, played overseas for 3. Now I'm an assistant coach for the College Park SkyHawks, which is the G League team for the Atlanta Hawks. And also I started my foundation, the Shelden Williams Foundation, about 2 years ago to help kids who are not necessarily able to do a lot of the things that I was afforded when I was younger, as well as tying in education to sports.
Thank you so much, Shelden. And I got to tell you, I love that you work with within the Atlanta Hawks organization because I am an ATL native. However, I did go to Syracuse, bruh. So that's a conversation we're going to have offline. Duke and Syracuse, I love the battle, but it's all love. Thank you again. Thank you, Shelden, for being a part of this today. Next, I would like to go to Malcolm Lemmons.
What's going on, everybody? Appreciate the opportunity. As she said, my name is Malcolm Lemmons. Born and raised in Washington, D.C., played my college basketball at Niagara University up in New York, and then transferred to Cal State San Marcos and finished about there. Went on to play a couple years of pro basketball overseas in Japan and transitioned out of the game in 2017 when I published my first book called Lessons from the Game, which basically highlight my story as an athlete and some of the key lessons that sports taught me throughout life. Published my second book called Impact Beyond the Game in 2020, and that's focused on teaching athletes how to build, leverage, and monetize their personal brands. And currently, I'm the founder of a media platform called Unheard, which is focused on amplifying conversations around mental health in sports. And mainly, kind of the impetus was, going through my own personal struggles with mental health and not really knowing how to address it, but also seeing what athletes are experiencing with COVID and social injustice and wanting to really just fill that void and become another voice in the space to help normalize these conversations. So once again, appreciate the opportunity and excited for the discussion.
Malcolm, thank you for that. And just thank you for using your voice to help the youth and for being vulnerable, right? To be able to share some of your own challenges that you went through. I'll share a little bit later about some of my challenges. I spent about 25 years working in music, and we know sports and entertainment go hand in hand. And so being able to share with our youth is so important. So again, thank you and welcome, King Malcolm.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I would love to hear from Dr. Vaughn Gay, who I simply call Vaughn.
Right.
Vaughn is a friend of Silence of Shame and has been working with us for the past 3 years in a volunteer capacity. And his contributions are invaluable. And he is an incredible licensed clinical professional. And he recently got his doctorate degree. So we're so proud of him. So welcome, Dr. Gay. Give us a little bit about your background and why today's conversation is important to you.
Well, thank you, Shanti. And we also got to add, I'm an Atlanta native as well. So definitely got to give Shelden some love with the SkyHawks, our new team here in the city. So hoping for plenty of success with them. Dr. Gay, I have a doctorate in social work and a licensed professional counselor. Have been licensed for the past 5 years, and I feel like I've been working in mental health all my life. It seems like just being in the health profession and the given spirit of working with different populations. Director of Holistic Atlanta, which is a mental health practice that leverages technology and virtual health to increase access of mental health services to underrepresented populations. Recently just started a podcast as well that you can find on Spotify, where I just kind of share some social commentary from a mental health and social psychological perspective, especially dealing with things that we've seen in this past year that we'll kind of talk about today. And then also, as you said, working with a Silence of Shame organization for the last 3 years. But most importantly, I guess with this conversation, I'm also a youth coach, coaching baseball over at Gresham Park. So, being able to see this from a couple of different perspectives, I hope to be able to add to this conversation.
Well, we certainly, again, are so grateful to have you here and look forward to what you have to share with our youth today. And I just want to give a little bit of context. Today's discussion is designed to provide underrepresented youth and youth of color advice and tools to help them thrive in what are truly unprecedented times, not only in the United States, right, but in the world. Our youth will learn various ways to foster mental well-being, including discussing challenges connected to COVID-19 and how to reach out to parents and friends about any issues surrounding mental health. So we're gonna dive right in. And I'd love to start with Shelden. What do you do when you feel anxious or when you're stressed out about something?
For me, when I'm anxious or stressed out, I usually take a second to kind of back away from whatever task I'm trying to do, take a deep breath. I might be dating myself a little bit here, but with the whole Bad Boys, movie with the whole woosah type thing, something similar to that, where I'm sitting here like,
yeah.
Then all of a sudden, I kind of re-examine what I'm doing and then try a different way of attacking it. Because obviously the previous way wasn't working. So I try to do that anytime I'm, anxious or just very stressed out or whatever I'm doing that's getting the better of me. I'm trying to go ahead and take a step away, maybe even do something else, then come back to it and have a fresh mind and just kind of attack it like that.
I love that. And we'll get more into it, but for the youth and the moms that are listening, those are techniques, right? And coping mechanisms. And we'll let Dr. Gay get more into that. And I too, Shelden, I try to just breathe. I learned about this technique called the 4-4-8 technique. You breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold for 4, and then you release. You do a big long release for 8 seconds. And when you exhale, and you can do 4, 7, 8, it's a lot of different techniques, but the important thing is to be able to do several repetitions and bring yourself back almost to your center, if you will, and to give yourself a chance to kind of process what's going on. I'll let Malcolm share what he does when he's stressed out, and then we will kick it to our clinician, Dr. Gay, to give us a little bit more context from a clinical perspective.
So for me personally, I try to focus on what I call the 4 M's, starting with meaning. So if it's something that I'm stressing about or I'm thinking about deeply, I may be thinking about it in the wrong way. So I gotta try to step back, as Shelden does, and reframe my particular thinking about whatever I'm working on or whatever I'm doing. So asking myself different questions. Another thing I do is music. I think music, has, obviously known to change moods. If you're feeling down, you listen to something upbeat, that's going to put you in a better mood. So I try to listen to something that's going to uplift my spirits and put me in a better mood. The next one is movement. So, we're all athletes here, whether that's just getting a full on hour workout or doing a quick 10-minute hit workout or getting some push-ups in, just something to get the blood flowing, your body movement can kind of help, reframe and reset your mind. And then the last one is meditation. I think, for years I've neglected my mental health personally, but, with everything we experienced in 2020, I've taken a step, and every morning I meditate. So that's a practice that I've implemented in my life and has been instrumental to kind of setting the tone for my day and getting me in a good headspace. So I focus on meditation, music, movement, and the last one was
what was the first one? You said before
music, meditation, movement, and meaning. My bad. And meaning. Yeah, that was it. So I focus on the 4.
Let me ask you something. Did you come up with those, or did you see someone else reference that? I mean, I know we all talk about them individually, but did you coin the 4 M's, or is this something that I'm just learning about in my journey?
I heard it in a podcast before, but I threw the meditation on as the last M. So the first 3 I heard someone talk about in a podcast and kind of just implemented it in my own life.
I love the way you put it together like that. We're going to certainly pass that along, and we'll type that in the chat section as we let Dr. Gay elaborate a little more. The 4 M's, I love it: meaning, music, movement, meditation. Definitely music. I've been listening to all these DJs doing quarantine and getting myself going, and comedy is a good one too. Laughter, I think, is good for the soul, and it puts you in a better mood, and it can certainly bring you back to a different place. So Dr. Gay, how can movement, meditation, music, meaning, breathing, what does this all mean when we're stressed out, and how can it really help our youth when we're stressed out about classes, stressed out about doing school virtually, stressed out about not being able to hang out with our friends? Because if we hang out with our friends and somebody's asymptomatic and they go back home and their grandmother or mother's there, and they might catch COVID, and we can't, do Christmas, or we can't travel like we do. And it's a lot, right? And we can't play sports like we usually do. And hopefully we'll be out of this pandemic. What do we do, Dr. Gay?
So what I'll do is I'll talk backwards on this a little bit because Malcolm brought up a couple of really good points, and I came up with 2 more M's as he was talking. Mindfulness, really important, and we want to add to that, and really being aware of our emotional reactions and how we're responding to certain triggers. And then also, Shanti, what we're essentially talking about is mood control, right? So something stresses us out. None of us can avoid stress. It happens. It's happened to us when we were young. It'll happen to us tomorrow. It'll happen in the future, right? And so it depends on how far off of our center, it throws us off. And a lot of times our emotional responses or our behavioral responses to stress, we're not even cognizant of how we are, developing an unhealthy behavioral pattern. So what we want to do is, especially for parents, they pay very attention to your children. Don't just, put them in front of things that occupies them for hours on end so that you can handle your business. Spend a lot of time with them. Some of these same things that we've heard for generations, they still are very true. Spend time with them, recognize any shifts in their behavioral pattern, because that's the first telltale sign, right? That's on a prevention side. If we're intervening, if a child is already stressed out, get them active, get them outside, get the endorphins flowing in their bodies. That way the natural biological process can take over, and their mood is actually shifting back to a really good space. A lot of times kids, if you think about the structure of school, it keeps them moving very rapidly. You have this subject and then this reading time, and then we go outside, right? So they're used to rapid structure. And so while that may be difficult to blend, the professional life inside the home, but now we're actually transitioning back out, and then school being disjointed, it's taking us outside of our normal parenting style. So being fair to yourself, giving yourself a little bit of self-care as well, but also making sure you're paying attention to the behavioral patterns of your children. That's the number one thing that you can do to identify how they're responding to different stresses in their life.
I love that. Thank you. Those are all great tips. So my next question is, due to the COVID pandemic, many youth sports are unable to take place in person. How do you think these recent changes have negatively affected those who turn to sports as an outlet and a way to better their mental well-being? Are there any virtual ways to mimic what in-person sport provides for these individuals that you would encourage or support young athletes to get involved in? And I'll kick it back to Shelden.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about it like that, but as you were asking the question, I'm thinking to myself, like, sports is more of a competitive type nature, and a lot of us want to at least go against the next person. So with the next person being removed, now we have to find different ways to try to compete, and doing it virtually is good in the sense that, yes, I can do drills, I can, mimic, what they're doing, and, things like that, where I'm trying to be better. Say I don't have a good left hand, for example. I'm doing different things to try to build that left hand up. Now I see another person doing the same thing on a Zoom call, and I'm like, dang, like, well, they're not losing the ball like I am. So I'm still trying to compete with them like that. But it's, I don't know, it's still a form of competition, but it's still not the same as being one-on-one going against each other. So that's one of the things that I would say that it's hard because the human nature is taken out of that realm of, you competing, but still a lot of different athletes are turning to trainers that are doing things via social media, Zoom calls, or even like giving out emails or doing, I guess it's old school, but right now, what they need to do, and then you at home in your backyard or driveway, you're doing those drills and filming and sending it back. So those are ways that you kind of get around, still trying to compete without actually competing with somebody.
I love that. And then maybe maybe some of the fellas or young ladies can, get a little TikTok going, and y'all get a little challenge going where y'all are, being competitive in your workouts. But it's important to keep moving, and those are great tips, Shelden. What would you say, Dr. Gay? Is it anything else that you can recommend? Because I know you said you just started coaching youth baseball, but what would you say to that?
I was going to say this is, hits home in a couple of different ways. So we actually had started our season last year. And I want to say right around March is when we got the notification from the county that all the parks were being shut down. And it was a little bit of a waiting game until they finally canceled the entire season. And now here we are at the top of the next year, and the kids have just been, asking if they're going to be able to play this year. Some parks and some, organizations have been open, but for the most part, with any type of public parks, they've been closed down. And it all depends on the age group as well. So what, youth, 5 to 6 years old, my boys, what they're getting out of sports is completely different than what like a high school student is getting. So for younger children, it may be a little bit easier to utilize some technology. I know what we simply do in my house is we put on a lot of games on YouTube, and we reenact the games, where he likes watching football a lot, so we'll play football, so those things are kind of controllable. Some of the teenagers in the community, I've noticed, they've started playing small 2-on-2 and 3-on-3, flag football and things like that. But then also when it comes to the high school students, I think the recruitment process is also majorly affected as well, because now sports is becoming part of the business and they want to be able to capitalize on their talent. Well, if you're not able to attend camps, if you're not able to really kind of kind of get around those rules in terms of communicating with coaches, how do you really market yourself? And so I think that's something that we're really missing as well. When we start looking at the older youth, their transition to their adulthood, but still want to be able to play sports. How is that impacting their, self-esteem? How's it impacting, their thought process on if they'll be able to make it to the next level, train, etc.?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Dr. Gay. Malcolm, do you want to add anything to that? Do you have any recommendations for youth that are at home and not being able to really do in-person sport?
Yeah, I think, Dr. Gay and Shelden brought up some really good points as it pertains to the actual physical nature of sports. I think one of the things that athletes miss is the camaraderie and the relationships that you build when you're in a team setting. And that was the thing that I loved about basketball the most. It was like being around the fellas and, having that camaraderie and that brotherhood. And so when that factor is kind of taken out and there's a disconnect there, it can be hard to kind of continue moving on. And so I think that, without having that interpersonal connection in this day and age, technology has, been beneficial in the fact that we can still keep in contact. But it's important for athletes, I think, to whether that's a Zoom call or FaceTiming with their teammates, just try to maintain that personal connection, not just texting or not just communicating over social media. I think is really important because you want to keep that camaraderie and that relationship going despite not having, that face-to-face contact. So I mean, I would just add that, as another point.
Absolutely. Stay socially connected. It is so important. You heard Malcolm, you heard Shelden, you heard Dr. Gay. If even if you guys are in, the season is over, you're in the middle of a season or whatever, just make sure that you are staying connected with your coaches. I know my nephew, he got drafted to play football for Georgetown, and they didn't end up going to DC this year. But, he told me, Malcolm, they're always on Zoom calls. He's talking to coach. He's getting to know his players. And I think that has helped him out a lot because it's been tough for him too, seeing other, college football players play, but not necessarily, their, division or whatever playing. So it's been tough, but those are all great tips and tools. So now I want to go into my other question is, what advice would you give to a young athlete who is struggling with their mental well-being and doesn't know how to talk to a coach or their parent about it? What are some tools you could offer to help them feel comfortable and create a productive dialogue with a parent or another influential adult in their life? I know for one, me, when I was growing up, I used to be a trainer for basketball and football for 4 years. I was head trainer. And I talked to coaches a lot. Although I wasn't an athlete, I felt like I was a part of the team. And sometimes it was just easier, to talk to coach about something that was going on and then, maybe bring it to the house later. But so many of our young people struggle. And that's why I think we see some things play out on social media that are kind of unhealthy at times when they're dealing with mental health challenges. I want to start with you, Malcolm, since you have this media platform now to really help athletes around talking about mental health and other things in their life. So what kind of advice would you give, Malcolm?
It's a really challenging question. I think, what we're trying to do in our overall mission is, amplifying these conversations through storytelling. And we've been fortunate enough to have a lot of athletes who are, willing to be vulnerable and transparent about their experiences, but that's not going to be every athlete. And so I think, when it comes to destigmatizing what mental health means, specifically in sports, that starts with, seeing other athletes and being inspired and empowered through their stories and what they're talking about. I think, we've had athletes such as Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan recently who have come out and talked about these things and been very transparent. And I think that's opened the door for other athletes to see that, mental health is normal. It should be talked about. And so I think it's just going to take more storytelling and more athletes coming out and being willing to show the younger generation that this is the normal thing. We all experience struggles in life. We all go through things and we're all human at the end of the day. So I think, what we're trying to do and seeing athletes who are, at the highest levels doing it, over time, that taboo around mental health, I feel like will be, destigmatized, and more athletes at the younger levels will be willing to talk to coaches, parents about certain things that they're going through in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It's all about helping to continue to erase the stigma, which is one of the reasons why my organization, Silence to Shame, exists. It is so important to show our young people that, hey, these, athletes or celebrities or influencers, if you will, they go through stuff just like anybody else. And And when it comes to our mental health as well as our physical health, we got to take care of it. We got to take care of it to live our best lives. Shelden, would you want to add anything to that from an athlete perspective?
Yeah, kind of piggyback on what Malcolm was saying. Those guys have done a really good job lately coming out. He named two guys within Kevin Love as well as DeMar DeRozan. But there's other athletes that came out, like Michael Phelps, that came out and said these things. So it's something that affects a lot of people. It doesn't matter who you are, it affects a lot of people. And I will say that for me growing up, we didn't have, webinar and all that stuff. We still had the AOL dial-up and everything. So we didn't have the webinars like, we have right now type thing. But we had a situation where my church, growing up, we have like a youth meetings. And that will be something that you get your peers together. If you don't have a chance to talk to your parents, or you don't have that relationship or the open communication, or if you're too embarrassed or whatever case it may be, for you to actually talk to another adult, maybe it's easier to talk to somebody that not too far removed, somebody that you trust that's not too far removed from you. That's what kind of helped us, where we come to the church, to these youth meetings, and we're talking about anything and everything. But it was an open, safe place for us to talk. Of course, with your peers, you're gonna have those, goofballs, kind of saying things in the back of their head. You know what? It's just what it is. But at the end of the day, you put in what you, what you gonna get out what you put in, and it was a safe place for us to talk. And actually, how many people are affected by something similar that you're going through, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I'm not in this alone. I can sit here and talk to this person about how they got through it or how they are going through it, and I can actually piggyback on that, or say, hey, this is what I'm doing to get through it as well. And it kind of goes being a communication back and forth, and we helping each other out. And all of a sudden, we start seeing us doing things together to get over wherever task we see in front of us.
Absolutely. And sometimes depending on the age group, right, it gets to be tough, because when you talk about something like mental health or a young person experiencing, depression and anxiety and other thoughts around mental wellness, some kids can use that. You talked a little bit, Shelden, about, the knuckleheads, right? But somebody might use that or try to use it against you, or to bully you, or to try to take your spot on the team. I want Dr. Gay to elaborate on that question, and then talk about the bullying portion. And I think sometimes our youth are afraid to step up and say something because of, what some of their other, teammates or classmates may do or say in response to what they're going through.
Again, what you just said in terms of looking at this in separate age groups is so very important. Again, just a message to parents: when you have children that are in that age range of 5 to 10, you have to create the environment and have conversations with them and letting them know that it's emotionally okay to talk about their thoughts and their feelings. When they have that confidence and they develop that repetition and that strength and that understanding that they can speak up for themselves without fear of being judged, and that's when they're more than likely to value those feelings and then not allow them to become internalized across time. When you are dealing with teens that may have difficulty in expressing themselves, or even just having different challenges that are going on. I actually have 4 athletes that I'm working with right now, high school athletes. And I think the phrase "more than an athlete" is actually appropriate, because some of the concerns that they're having are actually exacerbated by sports. So anxiety, performance anxiety, how they will look, in front of their teammates who are also classmates, right? So sports can be a little bit of an amplifier, in different directions. So, with those teenagers, I think that's where it's really important for you all to have, like Shelden said, the support groups. Coaches have to be able to start bringing in therapists, to create some programming, create some comprehensive programming for the entire sports program, right? So they're getting the academics with the tutors, they are getting the of course with the actual sport performance, but then they need to also be bringing in some mental health therapists to make sure they're creating groups for the young men to be able to talk about their different thoughts and feelings, because there are things that overlap from the team, from practice and the games into the school, and then social issues that go from the school onto the team. And so that's when we're in school. One more caveat with this: when we're away from school, if you think about this, when we're teenagers, you had your friends, your close friends, and when you all were in the school building, you all were really, really tight buddies, right? But then when you got home, you may talk to them over the weekend on the phone. You may not. You may spend time, so when we remove kids from the school environment, the isolation, and we may talk about this in a few more minutes, but the isolation that they're experiencing away from their team, away from practice, and away from the building, that's where we're starting to see like a little bit of a danger zone, a red area, to where we're really getting concerned with some of those athletes, those student athletes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Gay. And the next question is kind of similar to what we're talking about as it relates to stigma. We know the stigma surrounding many athletic communities. It paints mental health struggles as something that makes an athlete somehow weaker as a person and performer in their respective sport. What are some ways that you suggest to both athletes and coaches, and particularly coaches, of how to work to dismantle stigma, in addition to bringing in those programs? Shelden, do you have any other advice, for coaches, either at the youth level or high school or collegiate level?
Any advice? I will say that the way that I was coached growing up is a lot different than how I'm coaching these kids now. Obviously, times has changed. Back when I was growing up, it was more so, this is what I need you to do. Do it. If you can't do it, I'm gonna get somebody else to do it. Mm-hmm. I don't care what's going on with you personally, whatever. This is a job, this is what you need to do. Fast forward many years later, now I'm on that other end of basketball where I'm doing the coaching. Something going on, I see something going on. They're not smiling and laughing. It's not enjoyable to come in. Sit them down, like, what's going on? Talk to me. Is it off the court, family situation, whatever it is? Have that open line of communication where I'm talking to them as a human. Because at the end of the day, it's bigger than basketball, bigger than sports. It's about being there for each other. And if we can't be there for each other, then what are we doing? So now that times has changed, and I commend a lot of these players coming out and talking about these issues, because a lot of us go through something in various times of our lives, and we just need maybe a sounding board or an ear to lean on, to be in, or just, just get it off our chest, just get it out. Sometimes just yell it and get it out. Just being there for that person. And that's something that I try to do for my players, and being there for them so they know, hey, we don't need to do all these extra drills, all those extra punishments to try to get you to no, what's going on with you with the core, and then we kind of work from there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Malcolm, any advice for coaches or anyone else on the athletic administration team to be able to talk about mental wellness to the youth?
Yeah, I mean, I'll briefly piggyback off of what Shelden just said. I think it comes down to caring and empathy, and just having that open line of communication that Shelden mentioned, and building that trust with a player. I think asking the athlete, how are you feeling on any given day, goes a long way. And if there's a bond, if there's a strong relationship between a player and a coach, a player is more willing to be open and talk about something that they might be experiencing off of the playing field. So I think it simply comes down to that. And I think that you can be demanding as a coach and not coddle your players, but still care about them deeply and care about the human more than you do just an athlete. So I think that's simply what it's about: empathy, and then really caring about the individual as a person.
Absolutely. I want to just a quick housekeeping note, let everyone know that's watching virtually that we do have Q&A coming up at 12, right around 12:43. So let's see what questions you have for our panelists today. Make sure you utilize the Q&A box. If you look at the bottom of your screen over to the right, there is a Q&A option. So put your questions in there. So we want to make sure that we're getting all of your questions answered today. And I have one or two more questions we're going to try to get in before we start with Q&A. This one is for you, Dr. Gay. Young people could be reluctant to come forward about their mental health struggles for a variety of reasons. Are there signs adults or even youth can look out for to help them recognize when someone might be struggling, but not verbally opening up? What can we do if we notice someone who is struggling?
Right. So I think the first thing is to go back to what I said earlier, noticing a shift in the behavioral profile. If someone normally is a jovial person, if they, are used to interacting with friends, going out, if you're noticing a huge shift, if you're noticing them being more withdrawn, maybe a change in their sleeping or eating habits, or even just their desire, to engage in the normal activities that they typically engage in, then that's when we know there may be some things kind of going on. Of course, most teenagers will, when you ask them how they're doing, I'm good, I'm fine. How's things going? They're great, right? If you ask them how, are they okay? Yeah, sure, I'm fine. But there could be a lot that's kind of being hidden underneath. Even as a therapist, there may be, multiple sessions where we may go through and we're having, making great progress. And then, a parent may give me a call and say, hey, did he talk about this, that, and the other that happened? And, so teenagers are a little bit of in a different pocket, as they're transitioning emotionally to becoming adults and figuring out how to express themselves. So in terms of understanding what is, the major telltale sign, it is just a shift, in the way they are engaging in life. What can we do about it? Number one, as Malcolm said earlier, flooding them with, resources and getting them connected with things in their space on social media, with narratives, with connecting with people that they identify with, to understand that they are not experiencing the things that they are experiencing by themselves. We do have a lot of social media can be a little bit of a trap because it can actually, reinforce, some of those negative thoughts and feelings. And so if we can infiltrate that space, with your organization, with Malcolm's and Shelden's as well, I think that that's how we create a framework to shift, that approach to how we deal with our thoughts and our feelings with our youth. I did want to go back to the bullying question that you asked previously as well, because I think that bullying, if you look at it just in the social context, is like a virus, right? If we allow it to exist, then it's going to continue to spread and impact people. The only reason why it exists is because there's a lack of courage, maybe in the young folks that are witnessing it happening. Maybe the leadership is not paying enough attention to what's going on with their students and their student athletes. So, how do we address the bullying? We have to deal with it head on. We're talking about youth, right? We're not talking about grown adults in a school building. We're talking about youth. And so there is an approach through leadership to where we can not only create programming, and create the space for young people to talk, but when you see it, just stamp it out, just point blank period, because that does have an impact on the emotional wellness and the academic performance as well. So, a lot of things we've talked about today, if you really kind of pinpoint those and make bullet points on those, we really address how they're being impacted by maybe returning to the school or being away from the school, their access to resources, if they're staying socially connected. If we look at all those different perspectives, then we will actually be able to really get a good understanding if and what they're having troubles with that they're experiencing.
Thank you, Dr. Gay. Again, guys, remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, put your questions in the Q&A chat box. We're about to start Q&A shortly. I have two quick questions. What are some ways that student athletes can begin the process of sharing ideas with coaches and other players that could make their programs more accepting and open about mental health? I'll start with you, Shelden, and then I'll end on one last question with you, Malcolm.
Okay, so some ways that players can approach the coaches about issues with mental health.
Well, making their programs more open, right, around mental health and accepting.
More open. Well, speaking from our organization, I think they've done a good job of doing this, where they hired outside help to deal with these, things that come up. Hiring therapists and people that they can talk to, sports therapists, what they call themselves, sports therapists, where they can talk to these people that we not able to really fully get into or help them the way we want to. They're trained and specialized in doing this. So hiring them to meet once a week, but hey, we got a slot sheet coming up, fill in your slot sheet, and they'll come and talk to you after practice at these times, and you get out whatever you need to get out. And it doesn't get back to the coaching staff. It's you and that person's time. That's all it is. There's no, if I say something, it might affect this. No, this is your time to heal, your time to get what you need to do out and make sure that you're being healthy about it. So just having these people come in that are trained to deal with everything that we are not trained or equipped to do is one of the biggest things that our organization has done. And that's something that we took from the Hawks.
I love that. Yeah, we need to have more Dr. Gays come into these organizations. And I actually did a webinar for some staff with the NBA right before the holidays. And it's good to see just a lot of these larger organizations, right, from a sports perspective, taking mental health so serious amongst their staff, you know, as well as the players. So yeah, we need to make sure that we're bringing in more social workers and clinicians into these programs. So we have about 2 minutes left, and then we're going to get in it because I see questions coming in. I want to ask Malcolm, what benefits can promoting mental wellness amongst a team have for that overall program?
I mean, I think it can have drastic benefits when you talk about a player's overall wellness and well-being. You know, if you're going back to communication and just open dialogue, I think if players are, you know, more trusting of their coaches and vice versa, it creates, you know, that dynamic will translate onto the playing field. And I think players will be in a better headspace. They'll be happier to come to practice every day. And they'll just be better performing athletes on and off the playing field. So I think that having this open dialogue and amplifying these conversations is definitely going to have a huge impact when done appropriately, you know, on athletes. So,
Dr. Gay?
I was going to say, I wanted to add one thing to that as well. I think it's appropriate to preach mental toughness while performing on the field, but also preaching that it is okay to not always have to be strong off the field. And I think that's where those lines can get blurred a little bit. I'm so glad that Malcolm just brought that up because it sparked that thought. Mental toughness on the field, that's kind of like sports performance and sports psychology. But, you know, again, more than an athlete, when we take that jersey off, and even when we retire, you know, out of our careers, you know, do we have the emotional intelligence and the capacity to be able to process and regulate and deal with certain challenges that we're experiencing?
100%. And I want to reiterate that. Young men, young women, you're more than an athlete. You are more than an athlete. You're more than an athlete. You're more than an athlete. Just know that it takes your mental and your physical toughness, right, to be superior both on and off the field, the court, whatever it is. That's so important. So let's get right into some Q&A, guys. We have a lot of good questions coming up. So Javon Green asked, what are the best daily practices that I can do to stay mentally healthy? And I'll let either one of you guys take that.
You can go ahead.
Okay, no, I was going to say, I think that it's everyone's recipe is a little bit different, right? Some people wake up early and do some yoga, you know, maybe work out. Some practice mindfulness and meditation. Some have a conversation with someone in their support system. Some people like to go for a walk. You know, it really all depends what works best for you. You really have to understand if you are experiencing certain triggers, you know, avoiding the triggers in your environment and creating an environment and the space for you to be able to engage in your daily activities. So I know it's a little bit of a shell answer, you know, but if you kind of put yourself into that answer, you'll really see where that space, what that looks like for you.
Malcolm, you want to add real quick?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of echo the same thing. I think self-awareness is really key. And for me, it's just being aware of where I'm at and being present in the moment every single day. So waking up and asking myself how I'm feeling, how, you know, what does my mental space look like on this day? How's my body feeling? So just being aware of the body, of your mind every single day, I think is important. And then trying different, you know, whether it's routines or tactics and strategies to figure out, you know, what best works for you, as Dr. K said. So.
All right, thank you so much. All right, next question is, how do you talk to your kids about mental health and emotions? I'll go to Dr. Gay for that.
Mute. All right. How do you talk to your children? I think you keep it very simple. You know, you keep it simple and speak directly. Sometimes we try to dance around, you know, certain conversations that may be sensitive. Sometimes we may try to walk on eggshells, but you have to remember that kids enjoy structure and they're looking to adults for leadership. And so even when it comes to conversations about talking about their feelings, if they're in an emotional state, you know, walking them through, let me know what you're thinking. How are you feeling? How is that impacting you? You know, is this the first time you felt that way? when you allow people to talk, right, number one is getting the energy out, but it's also allowing them to process while also helping them to trust that their support system is there without judgment. If they are not having an emotional moment, again, I think it's just very important to make sure that we're ingratiating ourselves into our kids' lives as opposed to just only being, one directional in the other way. Watching television shows, sharing some of your personal narratives when you were a child. That connectivity, I think, is really important in helping them to be able to trust, and have that security within themselves to be able to express, their thoughts and feelings when they are having major moments.
Thank you, Dr. Gay. I agree. And, it's interesting. I think we do it with ourselves. We do it with our children, with our teammates. You go up to somebody, hey, how you doing? And, you're just supposed to say, I'm good, because that's the right thing to say. But when you say sometimes how you feeling, that tends to send a different signal. And sometimes it allows some, people to open up or kids to open up and really say how they're feeling. And to the parents, I'll just say, I came up with this little term, RAP, R-A-P. So first, you got to be able to recognize what your child is going through or if they're experiencing any symptoms. So really pay attention to them. Then you have to acknowledge it, because I've seen some parents who are in denial about some of the challenges and issues that their kids may be going through, because you don't want to think that something's wrong with my child, right? And mental health is the same as physical health. You go to the doctor, you can get help, and you can hopefully lead a somewhat normal life. So you got to be able to acknowledge it, and then you process through it. And that's getting yourself a clinician or talking to your primary healthcare physician, or seeing what benefits are there with your insurance so that you can do therapy, or learning more about self-care and incorporating it into your family time on a regular basis. So those are all important. Okay, our next question. Let's see, it's kind of the same thing. How do you talk to your kids about mental health? We did that one. Can you offer thoughts on the stigma people of color perceive when talking about mental health? Let's go to you, Malcolm, for that one. And then if anyone else wants to jump in.
I think there's just a negative association with what mental health means, because I think a lot of people, when they hear mental health, they automatically assume it means something is wrong with you or that you're crazy, when mental health, we all know, exists on a spectrum that can mean anything from like you're doing great and you're feeling good, or to depression and anxiety. So it's kind of removing that association and educating people on what mental health is and how it relates to our daily lives, because everyone, as you said, has mental health, but it's just about knowing how to assess it for yourself and how to being educated around the meaning of the word and how it pertains to our lives. To I think that's where it starts, when we talk about removing the stigma.
100%. As I tell people all the time, we all have mental health, but we may not all have a mental illness. Dr. Gay, what would you add to that?
Again, in terms of stigma, that people experience, I think that this is very important for you to own the space that you're in. When you do that, you're the one that writes the narrative, and you really don't have to worry about how others are going to perceive you, because again, everyone has good days, everyone has bad days, and that's kind of packaged within your mental health. And so I think that everyone should be addressing it. You shouldn't just allow your physical health to go on for years and years without getting a doctor's visit, getting a checkup. Same thing, say, like you said, if you go to a doctor through your insurance, you can go to a therapist through your insurance. Those that do have a specific mental illness, I think these conversations are uplifting them to be able to let them know that it is okay and appropriate and accessible to be able to get that addressed.
Yeah, and I think it's important too for communities of color to understand the history of stigma in our community and around mental health. And it's a lot of really great information out there online. Certainly my organization, silenceashame.com, and on YouTube, Silence to Shame TV, we have a lot of great community conversations with people like Dr. Gay and other clinicians talking about it, breaking the stigma. We have a podcast also where we interview athletes. We got to just put it out there, right? And again, make it a part of your everyday practice. So at the dinner table, sometimes, we shy away from talking about tough issues. And I think now we've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with our family members, and we need to be able to talk about everything, and especially mental health. So if you're not feeling good or if something is wrong, don't be afraid to share. And parents, don't be afraid to talk to your kids either, because I'm not saying you got to tell your child everything, but you got to let them know if you're going through something too, so they can go, oh, Mom, really? You're doing with that? Or dad, you really doing with that? Or auntie or uncle, like, okay. So I guess something isn't, nothing is, I'm not crazy. That C word that I hate, right? That we hear people throw out on social media all the time. So we got to continue, erasing that stigma and educating our communities. Next question. My son played sports throughout high school and suffered anxiety too. Now he is 20 and is starting to connect the dots with his thoughts, actions, and consequences. Do you have advice for his continued success? And I want to start with Shelden and see if you'd like to add anything to that. Or add to that.
You kind of broke up. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. My son played sports throughout high school and suffered anxiety too. Now he is 20 and starting to connect the dots with his thoughts, actions, and consequences. Do you have any advice for his continued success?
So I'm not sure what sport he plays, but if he's now connecting the dots in the sport that he's continued to play, I feel like that he should continue to do that because it obviously makes him happy. I will say that for him to deal with this at an early age and now getting control of it and a hand on it, it shows progress from what he started to where he's at right now. So I think that he's doing a good job so far from what I'm hearing from the question. Just continue to do the things that he's doing right now in that sport, whatever it is he's playing, and just enjoy it. I know that a lot of people can put extra things into it that make things kind of go left or right, but if he's just kind of blocking those type things out and just enjoying what he's doing right now, I think that's something that he needs to continue to do.
Malcolm?
No, I don't really have much to add. I think, Shelden kind of hit it on the head. I'll go back to something Dr. Gay mentioned before, which was owning your space. So I think really just being aware of how your past experiences kind of made you who you are today, and not dwelling on, any mistakes that you may have gone through or things that you feel like you've done wrong, and kind of moving forward in that way. So I think, owning your space and just being self-aware and then taking the things that you've experienced to help you in the future is important.
Yeah, being self-aware is so key, right? So now that he really is understanding what the anxiety might mean, understanding those thoughts and really processing through them. I think it's, I'm absolutely gonna let you talk, Dr. Gay. I just wanna add that I think being aware, like you guys said, of your surroundings and letting people in, I think is important. And that I tell people, all the time, who's in your starting five? So I think that young man should have a starting five, right? You can't start a basketball game without 5 players on the court. So my starting five around wellness is, I have 2 best friends. I have a cousin that I call, but you got to get at least 4 or 5 people in your life that you trust, that you can call if you're having a tough day or if that anxiety starts rearing its head. One of them could be your therapist. So hopefully, mom, you're incorporating family therapy into his regular schedule, or maybe, the team has some sports psychologists, which I know is not quite the same as someone like Dr. Gay, but they need to make sure that they're incorporating, the therapist, the friends into that starting five. So he has a great support system. Dr. Gay?
That was exactly what I was going to say. It sounds like he's ready for therapy, right?
Yep.
Some of my most successful clients are those that come in very self-aware and very willing to make the change. That makes my job very easy, and it makes the growth trajectory very high. Those that kind of come in that are forced to come into service, or those that are really not ready to open up just yet, it can become a little bit difficult. But it sounds like as he's already been able to make some connections from his past to some current behaviors, he's ready to take that next step and get some guidance to really get to a place to where he's healthy and happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We wish that young man the best of luck on everything. Another question. Let's see. Shelden, can you talk about how coaches can maintain high expectations without overwhelming players mentally? It's a great question.
Yeah, so I think the way a lot of coaches are doing it now are realizing that you can't talk to everybody the same way. Trying to figure out their players and trying to figure out what triggers them. I will say that, I say old school coaching, it was like, this is the way I was taught, now this is where I'm teaching type thing. But now with these newer coaches, the generation gap has changed where it's more so like, hey, we got to figure out, I can talk to maybe this guy one way, but yeah, I can't talk to him the same way. So I got to figure out what makes him tick, what makes him go, what I need to do to get him going or pick him up. Same way with the next guy. And it's not really more work for you as a coach. It's just something that you need to do because you got to look at these people as actually people, like, human beings, instead of just like players, X, Y, and Z, get them in, get it out type thing. So I will say that having a lot of these kids that are playing the sports and everything, they need to be handled the way that you would like to be handled. And I feel like a lot of the coaches nowadays are kind of trending towards that versus the old school method where it just, this, and over. And I mean, obviously there's times where you'll get on a person and be like that, but also another time where you got to pick the person, head up and make sure that they're able to do the next thing as well.
Thank you. Malcolm, you want to add anything to that real quick?
Nope, I think that was perfectly said.
Absolutely. Well done, Shelden. Dr. Gay?
No, I think Shelden really kind of hit the point a second ago when he talked about taking more of an empathetic approach and understanding that, each athlete is going to respond differently to coaching. And so the more that we take that preventative mindset and creating that environment going in, and knowing that we're going to have to approach our athletes differently, then I think the more there will be positive outcomes and positive emotional responses from the group at large.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that we've almost been on an hour. This is such an incredible conversation. I could talk for 5 more hours about it because, we want to do everything that we can to empower our youth and their mental wellness. So again, I'd like to thank Champions for Philanthropy and the Playbook Agency, Juliet and her team, Alicia and everybody else for this incredible panel. Shout out to our incredible panelists, Shelden Williams, the crowd goes wild, Malcolm Lemmons, he goes up, the crowd goes wild, and Dr. Gay. This has been incredible. I would love to give each one of you a moment to share with how our viewers can stay in touch with you, talk about, Malcolm talk about Athletes Unheard and how people can stay on top of that, how they can buy your books. Shelden, anything you have going on, and Dr. Gay, of course, I know you're probably going to be getting some calls and clients after this young man, so let them know how they can reach your practice. So we'll start it off with Malcolm.
You can find me on every social media platform at Malcolm Lemmons, and Athletes Unheard is on every social media platform as well. We'll be in the process of developing our website next month, so you be on the lookout for that. And then you can get my books off of Amazon. That's Impact Beyond the Game and Lessons from the Game.
Thank you. Thank you. Shelden?
Yes, I'm on social as well. It's my name, Shelden Williams, Shelden with an E-N. Also, my foundation, Shelden Williams Foundation, is on IG. And then my website is thesheldenwilliamsfoundation.com. So you can find me on those platforms and see what I'm doing next.
Awesome, awesome. And Dr. Gay?
All right. So in terms of therapy services, we are doing in-clinic and virtual services right now via telehealth. So those that are interested, you can send an email to referral@holisticatlanta.com. That's referral@holisticatlanta.com. And if you want to follow me on social media, my handle on Instagram is @theATLLPC. And I'll give you a landing spot for all of my videos on YouTube and podcasts I just started and all those great things, talking all things mental health.
Thank you, thank you. And I, again, am your moderator, Shanti Das. You can check us out at www.silenceashamed.com. We also have a podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud with over 40 episodes. So parents, youth, go check it out. And then you can follow me at Shanti404 or at Silence of Shame. And also I run a business called Yeah Wellness, where I interview celebrities. And so you can check out my past interviews with a lot of celebrities around their mental health and wellness on YouTube under at Yeah Wellness. So this has been amazing. Thank you again to the Kings. Thank you, Shelden. Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Dr. Gay. I really, just can't thank you enough for pouring into the youth today. And so now I want to kick it back over to our host. Thanks again. God bless.
Thank you, Shanti, Shelden, Malcolm, and Dr. Gay for that great conversation. We all appreciate you sharing your advice and expertise on how we can support youth as we navigate through this time of uncertainty and constant change. Thank you, Juliet, Marcus, and everyone at the Playbook Agency, and to our team at Champions for Philanthropy, especially Christian Tavares, for all of your assistance in putting this event together. And thank you to all of the viewers for tuning in. Please be sure to follow us on social media at Champions for Philanthropy to keep up with our work and find out more about future events.
We thank you all today for the gift of your time and sharing this experience, especially with our youth. Thank you to Michelle, Alicia, and the entire Champions for Philanthropy team. It has been an amazing pleasure and journey just partnering with you on this event. This has been a great experience. We appreciate sharing this Saturday with you. Follow us on Twitter and on IG at the Playbook Agency for our website. It's called theplaybookagents.com. Please use these platforms to see what other upcoming events we have in store for 2021.
Yes.
Thanks again and have a great day. Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.